Welcome to Annapolis Mosaics. Our program spotlights people in our community who are involved in activities intended to promote good human relations. I am Michael Keller, the chair of the Annapolis Human Relations Commission and your host. The commission is a city board that seeks to promote equal opportunity and to eliminate discrimination. My guest today is Kathy Bird, who is the Executive Director of FoodLink. Kathy, welcome to Annapolis Mosaics.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, let's start by giving our viewers a sense of what FoodLink is all about and a little bit about its history.
All right, let me give you a kind of broad brushstroke, if you will. We have actually been serving the community since 1991. The seeds, if you will, for FoodLink were planted by two incredible women who attended a banquet, and there was inclement weather, and they only had about a 40% attendance rate, and they posed the question, what will happen with all the leftover food? And the answer they were given was, it will be discarded. And Judy and Susan, being Judy and Susan, said, there's a much better answer to this. And that's really how the entire thought of linking food to people who are in need came about. Judy Rayshap was a real estate developer. Susan Hikus was an attorney, retired here in town now. And because Susan's an attorney, she dotted the I's and crossed the T's, and they decided that they would actually form their own nonprofit. They did a lay of the land, if you will, at the time, Mike, getting a sense of what feeding programs were out there, what the need was, and then looking at geographically convenient donors, food donors. So in their very first year of operation, with their handful of friends who they trained to become volunteers and the donors they were working with and area feeding programs, they distributed 33,000 pounds of food. And the mantra became, good food should feed hungry people, not the landfill. Well, let's move the clock ahead to 2013. We now average at least 2 million pounds of food and other life-sustaining essentials for people who are in need. And we have close to 75 feeding programs that we support here in the county. We've got probably close to 200 volunteers that are very ably managed by Paula Gordon, who's my partner in the office, the Director of Volunteers and Services. And because we have learned so much over the years that when you're dealing with folks who are truly having a difficult time putting food on the table, that's symptomatic. There are going to be other issues as well. So along the way, we've done many other things. Many people don't know that FoodLink actually started the Center for Help, Centro de Ayuda. And that was to meet a need that became blaring to us when we were doing our produce program, which I will also touch on. And in the dead of winter, we had folks coming out to access fresh fruits and vegetables in flip-flops and sleeveless dresses and that kind of thing. And we began to understand back then, we're talking late 90s, very early 2000s, that there was a burgeoning Hispanic Latino population that we were working with. So in order to answer a lot of unmet needs that we knew they were having, trying to integrate themselves into the community, we started the Center for Help, and we were able to get a grant. We were able to get the city to allow us to bring a trailer at the Allen Apartments, and we set up a myriad of programs through the health department, through the co-op extension service. It was just an incredible coming together of the community to provide a tremendous amount of services. And then we helped them launch and become their own 501c3 after 3 years because of funding opportunities for them. The core of our program was working with existing food donors, which tends to be the grocery store chains, wholesalers, larger food purveyors. And we learned about a pilot program that was being conducted in the country with wholesale produce distribution. And we were really struck by the importance of trying to get a program like that established here. And even though we felt that we were all fairly bright, educated women and moms to boot, and knew a lot about the wonderful nutritional benefits of that food, we learned so much more than we ever could begin to imagine. So we were the first non-food bank in the entire country to undertake wholesale produce distribution. And we have a program that actually originates out of the Jessup Market, which is the Maryland State Produce Market. We have a wonderful gentleman now who solicits those donations for us of the surplus food from those donors. We also work with the Gleaning Network, and we bring truckloads of food in on Friday mornings of fresh fruits and vegetables here into the community. And the entire emphasis was to get the nutritional benefit of that food to people who need it the most and can least afford to buy it. And what we have learned over time, because there's been a lot more emphasis nationwide on health. And there have been a lot of articles that were done on Anne Arundel County. How do we stack up? How are we comparing with other jurisdictions for things like cancer and hypertension and diabetes and obesity and heart issues? And as you know, some of our test results were a little dismal. And the other thing that we have learned is that whenever you're looking at talking about either a preventative course or you're talking about people that are already involved with some kind of a medical issue, that part of the treatment plan or the preventative plan that's so important is the incorporation of fresh fruits into your diet, particularly fresh fruits and vegetables. And that sounds so easy, but if you are folks that are that have a really fragile budget, if I don't like the term working poor, but if you're folks that are working and it's so that you're kind of making it marginally from month to month, or if you're a single head of household and you've got, I don't care if we're talking someone who's retired, someone on medical disability, but if you've got limited funds, no matter what they may be, no matter what form they may be to purchase food, and especially if you have children to feed, you may want to give them grapes, but at $3.99 a pound, that may be a little cost prohibitive, where you can buy a 2-pound bag of cookies for 99 cents. If you have 3 mouths to feed, you're going to make what you feel is the decision that you have to make at that point. So we've been bringing fresh fruits and vegetables by the truckload in. It's Friday mornings. The main distribution site is open right now. It's at the Riva Farmers Market, which is at the corner of Riva Road and Truman Parkway, beginning at 9 o'clock. We have about 30 of our recipient agencies that come there, and then the upper pavilion is for individuals and families. So anyone who finds that they have a need is welcome to come. Another unmet need that was brought to our attention was that there wasn't a consistent resource for families in crisis who had infants and toddlers. And the day that kind of made us say we had to do something was the day that a caseworker came and explained that there had been a young family found living in their car. And they had an infant. They actually had 2 infants. And the second baby was somewhat of a surprise. And the mom had a very problematic pregnancy. The father spent a lot of time at the hospital with the wife who was in the hospital because of these health issues, or taking care of the baby they already had. And they had a private landlord. And long story short, the landlord, even though he was aware of the problem, gave them 30 days once the baby was born to catch up with rent. Because even though the father remained gainfully employed, the employer was, the job was not in jeopardy, and the employer was totally supportive, they were not able to pay him past a certain time when he ran out of paid leave. Well, they were not able to catch up in 30 days, and the landlord tossed him. This particular family did not have a support network of any kind. When a situation like that occurs, the Department of Social Services comes in, and they do a wonderful job of trying to plug those families into services. And the first thing they're going to do is, get them out of the car, put them in a hotel, start looking at, how they can get that family stabilized. Well, we were asked, because we have this incredible, wonderful working relationship with all the grocery stores in the area, was there a way for us to be able to get donations of baby items? The short answer was no. We spent the better part of a year doing a lot of research, going to all of the major manufacturers of baby supplies. When the stores at the local level told us they would love to help us but couldn't, because for vendor credit purposes, all of their product had to be returned. So if there was a rip in a bag of diapers, Mike, or a dent in a can of formula, no matter what the situation may have been, they were not allowed to donate it, even though they would have been happy to. So it has also become a grassroots part of our program, if you will. We started in the corner of our office. We now have 7 baby pantry locations throughout the county, and that are open to the public, and then we have one that's private because we do support the domestic violence shelter on an as-needed basis. Everything else that we do is covered under what we call the caring umbrella or the crisis umbrella, depending on what your situation may be. And I can't even begin to tell you the types of things, you know, that we have done. We have helped families who had a severely disabled child who was 8 years old that needed a very specialized car seat. We've helped families who needed cancer medications. Now we're getting overrun with requests for utility prevention, eviction prevention, you know, just a myriad of situations that folks find themselves in when they're desperately struggling to kind of hold on to their lives.
You know, this is incredibly impressive, the work that FoodLink has done. And I read a statement that was on your website, which I'd like to share with our viewers. And what FoodLink says is, what we do isn't glamorous, but it is absolutely life-sustaining to our struggling neighbors. Hunger does not discriminate, and neither does FoodLink.
That's right. That's absolutely true. And I say that because even though we have been serving the community since July 1st, 1991, we are still told constantly, we've never heard of you. And I think if you're not in the human services community, or if you've been fortunate enough to not be in a position of need, that makes a certain amount of sense. But the other problem, Mike, is that, and even from a funding aspect, people want to see what they're funding. They want to see the programs in action and that kind of thing. It's a little difficult for people to want to volunteer to be our poster children, if you will. No one wants to be the father that's coming with, you know, to get bags of food because at that particular moment he can't afford to put food on the table, or the mom that doesn't have formula for the baby's bottle, or the family member that can't provide medication or whatever that particular need may be. So it's very hard for us to be able to really show people necessarily what we do, or funders necessarily what we do. And we understand that, and we strive to protect people's dignity, because very often when you listen to people's stories, you say, "There but for the grace of God," and you really mean it, because you can't imagine how you would react if it was your family that was in that particular situation.
Right. Well, one thing that FoodLink does present on its website and in terms of its information is that it's the last step in the process, where other traditional possibilities have, or traditional programs have actually not met the need. Is that accurate?
That's correct. I say to people, we're either the first doorstep people land on, or we're the last doorstep. And often it is the last, Mike, because there are times that traditional support systems either can't help, or they find that they have to turn people away. And they may not be able to help your family because whatever level of income is coming in might be $5.12 a month too much for you to qualify, even though when the family sits down and explains the expenditures, you really understand why there's a need. Or the traditional support system says, "Yes, Mike, I can help you and your family. Fill out the paperwork, and then we'll get back to you in 30 or 45 or 60 days. And you know, so the situation that we run into is, if you're a family that's out of food and you have an immediate need for food, what are you supposed to do in that period of time? Or you can't take care of the baby, what are you supposed to do in that period of time? And that's where we come in.
Well, we're going to take a break now, but when we return, I'll be talking in more detail with Kathy Bird, the Executive Director of FoodLink, about some other aspects of her program. I'm talking today with Kathy Bird, the Executive Director of FoodLink. Kathy, could you provide our readers with some understanding of the actual operation of FoodLink. Specifically, how do you go from donations to distribution? How does that process work itself out? Do you have a particular way you do it, or is it depending on the circumstances? How does the food get from the grocers who are donating it to individuals? What's the process that you have?
Well, the FoodLink is not a food bank, which is it's a misnomer for us, but we understand that people are very familiar with that concept. What separates us is how we get the food to the people is direct distribution. In other words, when I was mentioning earlier that we work with 75 food donors and that we have an army of about 200 volunteers, those volunteers, let's pretend for this that you're a FoodLink volunteer.
Okay.
And Thursday is your day, so the giant in your area would know that you were coming. Okay. And the surplus food that would be available from that store would be placed in your vehicle. And you would know exactly where you were taking it. You would have every week the same dedicated food run, which could be a homeless shelter, a soup kitchen, low-income senior housing, or emergency pantries that are already located all throughout Anne Arundel County. And you would be taking that food directly there. We don't warehouse. There's not a middleman. The food is available. We pick it up. We get it where it needs to go. And so we have, about 75 programs here in Anne Arundel County that we are supporting. And those runs occur Monday through Saturday. So that's the easy step in terms of the easy explanation of how we get food to people. The produce program, people come to us. Individuals and families are actually allowed to come, and access the food at the site. And then the 30 agencies that come to that site, as you can imagine, get back into their vehicles after they've gone through the line to get their thousands of pounds of fresh produce, and they go back out to where their programs are located all throughout the county so that folks have easier access to that food. And everything that we do is free. So there's never any fee charge for anything, any service that we provide.
And you mentioned that you have 200 volunteers.
Right.
Are you primarily a volunteer-based organization? How does that compare with your other staffing?
We have
a lot of volunteers.
It is a lot of volunteers, and God bless them, everyone. We are just incredibly fortunate that we work with some of the nicest, kindest, most generous, warm-hearted people, I think, that are here in the county. They are wonderful ambassadors. I honestly believe, Mike, not just for FoodLink, but for the county, because it just goes to show, I think, the amount of caring that there really is here, that people really do want to make a difference and that they are willing to take the time out to help. With all of the programs that we have and all of the volunteers that are involved, there's 2 paid staff, and then we have 2 full-time paid staff. And then we have 1 kind of a contractual hourly basis as we can find the money to have that additional help. And we need more staff, but you have to do the best you can in lean economic times.
Well, with respect to lean economic times, has FoodLink seen an increase in demand for its services since the onset of the Great Recession in 2007? And with respect to that, what does the demographic profile of your clientele look like, and has that changed over the last few years as the country has experienced some economic hardships?
Absolutely. I'll answer the second question first, which will feed into the first part of your question. Yeah. There has been a tremendous change in the demographics in terms of people in need. I've been doing human services over 30 years, and what I will tell you is I have never seen the shift that I have seen probably in this last 8 years or so. And the biggest difference is that I'm going to use the word poverty because I think it's the one that people most easily identify with, but poverty, if you will, was the defining term for people who were in need. And you kind of, they were a known population, and there were known areas in the community and that kind of thing where they lived. That has totally ceased to exist. The lines of need are so blurred that there is no firm picture anymore of who is the person in need. It's the person who sits next to you at work. It's the person who lives next door to you or is next to you on the bus or someone you go to church with. We have seen a huge influx of seniors needing help, families having to come to help, people who have never in their lives had to seek any kind of emergency assistance before. And so what I say, there was a training that we went to in the past year, and the comment that was made that I thought summarized it pretty well is poverty and need have made it into suburbia, which is absolutely true. When you talk about how drastic a change has this been and how much more need are we seeing, I would say that 10 years ago or more, we were seeing there were probably about 7,500 families a month that were accessing emergency services. When we started really hitting the skids, that went to 15,000. Based on the annual return from all of our recipient agencies last year, in 2012, because we only ask for statistics from them specifically once a year, there are over 40,000 seeking some kind of emergency assistance through our network now per month last year. That's a tremendous change. And I don't like to be a prognosticator in these times, necessarily, but I said I felt that it was probably realistic that we'd see another 10% increase by the end of this year, when we're looking at the numbers at the beginning of 2014 for 2013.
And that's going to be impacted by what's happening at the national level. The U.S. House of Representatives recently voted to make very substantial cuts over the next 10 years in the food stamp program. The Senate has also approved cuts, but significantly less. But there's all likelihood that there are going to be cuts in that program when the House and Senate ultimately come to an agreement. Food stamp recipients are already getting less to begin with. So my question is, how is this going to affect families, and to what extent and what role will FoodLink have in helping to fill that gap that's going to be created when the food stamp program is cut back to at least some extent?
Right. I don't think most people understand that when you're talking about a food stamp recipient, the average is $30 a person a week for them to live on. And I believe that there is a perception that people get thousands of dollars of food stamps, which is not the reality. Every time that there is a change in that, it has a dramatic impact on the family. We've been bombarded with phone calls since the House enactment, because everybody is saying, my food stamps were cut, my food stamps were cut. And we're explaining, well, this is across the country. Some people understand that, some people don't. What they understand is that my family now I'm supposed to feed my family on $170 a month. Or a woman who called me yesterday and said, I get $32 a month now in food. It creates a tremendous hardship. There are people that are truly dependent on that. And even if they have, because a lot of people that receive food stamps are folks who are on medical disability, and those are not large amounts of money to live on. We're talking the $600 range. Sometimes it's anywhere from $500 to $700 a month. So when you start looking at taking away any kind of living expenses, Mike, when you're talking about rent and utilities, that doesn't leave an awful lot for food, which is why folks qualify. It's much more difficult to qualify than it used to be. And now we have people from seniors, from the seniors to the infants who are in need. And that means that we're getting calls from the individuals and families, and the office is also getting calls from our recipient agencies saying, we're being overrun now. I mean, we're seeing a lot more people coming, and there's a lot more need. So, can you get us more food? We need more food.
Yeah. So. With respect to your operation, you operate just in Anne Arundel County, or is this a statewide program?
We are not statewide.
Okay.
The bulk of what we do is Anne Arundel County.
Okay.
The greatest area of service we have is Anne Arundel County, and our offices are located in Annapolis.
Okay.
We are in 4 counties on the Eastern Shore,
All right.
and which is Queen Anne, Talbot, Dorchester, and the one I'm forgetting. But what we do there is strictly food rescue, and which means that we're working with grocery stores and volunteers to get the food from the grocery stores out to recipient agencies there. But the other programs that we have are strictly here for the residents of Anne Arundel County.
I'm sure that our viewers will want to learn how they can contact you, perhaps to serve as a volunteer or to donate. How can people get in touch with FoodLink? How can they learn more about you, Kathy?
Well, they can always go to our website,
Which is?
FoodLink Maryland, all spelled out, .org.
Okay, that was FoodLink Maryland, Maryland all spelled out, .org.
They can call, if they're interested in any kind of a volunteer position, they should call Paula Gordon, our Director of Volunteers, at 410-897-3941. If people want to talk about donating, and specifically if they want to make financial donations versus perhaps food or something else, they can certainly call me directly, which is 410-897-3942. People can also contribute directly on our website. And we're also very open to businesses and groups that may want to host a baby drive or something like that to help one of the programs that we currently have here.
Thank you for viewing our program today, and please join us again on Annapolis Mosaics. If you would like to have more information about the Annapolis Human Relations Commission, please jot down the information on your screen. You can contact us at 410-263-7998 or by email at hrcommission@annapolis.gov. Or check out our page at the City of Annapolis website. Go to www.annapolis.gov, click on City Government, then on Boards and Commissions, and simply scroll down to the Human Relations Commission page. And always remember the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who said, "We have flown the air like birds and swum the seas like fishes, but have yet to learn the simple act of walking the earth as brothers and sisters."